It's not Copite today. This time we've got back to being a Pokemon, not a Digimon today either. But we're getting more leaks of the upcoming RTX 4000 series, especially as we get close to expecting to hear about them at the end of this month at the GTC conference from Jensen Huang. Now, what do we have here? And should we believe this guy? So this is FCL, which is at Qubit Leaks. Now, backing up these performance numbers that we're seeing in this graph that I'll talk more about in a second, he's also releasing some images, saying a teaser for GTC, showing the GPU cooler for what looks like a high-end RTX 4000 series card. And again, well, something like this, I guess, could be faked or whatnot. Obviously, it could be. I mean, it does look like what could be an official marketing image coming from that presentation, so that could indicate that FCL at Qubit Leaks has some kind of access to the GTC presentation or some information from it ahead of time. Also showing this image, which I guess I need to kind of zoom out on, which appears to be a smaller card next to a bigger one. So maybe this is like your 4090 that's out of the shot, and maybe your 4080 coming in here, something like that, or maybe this is the 4070. It's hard to say exactly. Now this one seems to be a much lower quality image, and I've got to say the way this fan kind of went here, at first I was wondering, does that almost look like it's badly photoshopped and just kind of running over the edge? But then I was comparing with this one, and it looks like it's just a low quality image, and these do kind of cut into the bracket over there. So I don't think that's just a bad Photoshop. So the images seem like they're kind of legit. So let's look at what performance numbers. So these would theoretically be coming from a slide from that GTC presentation. And he says he can't specify which SKU this is, but it's some internal RTX 40 graphs. So what is it showing? It seems to be ray tracing performance. Let me get myself like really tiny out of the way here. So unfortunately, like I said, we don't have the exact card model, and we don't even know I mean, it's clearly comparing performance in like Control versus Control, Metro Exodus, Enhanced Edition, Minecraft, Quake 2, RTX, Dying Light 2, Cyberpunk 2077. The point is, all these games are very clearly ray tracing games. So this is obviously a ray tracing performance graph. And then they have Autodesk Arnold, Blender Cycles, and Chaos V-Ray. I'm less knowledgeable about the productivity tasks, but V-Ray, at least to me, sounds like a ray tracing benchmark. So the point is, this sounds like a ray tracing performance graph. And the question, the massive question here is, what is this percentage scaling off of? So this could be something like, a 4080, sorry, like a 3080 to a 4080, or this could be, a 3090 to a 4090. I really hope it's not just like, the 4080 without DLSS and the, 4080 with DLSS. I don't think that's what it is, because DLSS wouldn't really make sense here in the professional applications, which is why this seems like to me it's going to be a generation on generation performance chart, assuming it's real. Once again, this is a leak, guys, but if you want early information on this stuff, it's going to be leaks. That's how this works. Anyway. The point is, this looks like it would be a generation on generation uplift, and again, with the productivity apps, I don't think this would be relying on DLSS. So, with that in mind, it's looking like performance in Control will double. Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition doubles. Minecraft doesn't double, but it's a 1.8, so an 80% increase. Quake 2 RTX is a 2.2 times increase, so more than doubling. And Dying Light 2 looks like around 1.9, so not doubling, but close. And Cyberpunk more than doubling. So this would indicate that there's going to be, at least on some particular SKU model, whether this is, the 3080 to 4080 or 3090 to 4090, it's looking like there's doubling of the generational ray tracing performance. And that would be huge, because I felt like, the 3080 in a lot of games does have usable ray tracing at 1440p, but below that point, like, you have to turn the ray tracing settings so far down or use DLSS so aggressively that I wasn't super excited by ray tracing this generation. Whereas I'm hoping next generation, you can kind of crank the ray tracing settings without worrying so much about that massive performance loss. So anyway, I wish I had more details on what exactly this is all about, but I think that's all I can say about that at this point. Now, this is not the only set of leaks and rumors we're seeing here. We're also getting some information from Mega-Size GPU, and Mega-Size GPU doesn't give us any kind of images to back up their claims, so who knows what exactly to make of this, but there's a couple of interesting things. One thing is he's claiming that there's going to be an update to the RTX 30 series lineup, that there's going to be an 8GB version of the 3060, a 3060 Ti with GDDR6X rather than just GDDR6, and a 3070 Ti model based on the GA102 instead of the GA103. So in other words, it would be like a cut down 3080 instead of a, full fat overclocked 3070 based on the GPU die there. And I guess the claim is that this is to help clear stock and that these would primarily go to maybe even like system integrators to sell in OEM builds or something like that. It's hard to make sense of exactly what's going on here, but I'm reporting on it. So there's that. But Mega-Size GPU is not done there. He was also saying that there could be a 16GB 4080 and a 12GB 4080 released and launched at the same time, kind of like how there was a 6GB and 3GB GTX 1060 launched at the same time. So we could be seeing an RTX 4080, 16GB and 12GB, which seems really weird to me. Now, he's also talking about the layers in the PCB designs. So he's saying that like the 4080 12GB would have a completely different PCB design from the 4080 16GB. Now, Copite seems to be chiming in here and saying we already know some specs, but the corresponding relationship between specs and models has not been determined. So he's saying we could have a PG141 SKU that's an RTX 4080 12GB, but is he saying that maybe this could just be a 4070? I don't know, guys. It's a little hard to make sense out of all of this. The folks over at Video Cards are trying to keep track of all of these leaks and rumors in tables. I would certainly hope to see a 16GB 4080, and that maybe this 12GB thing is really some kind of a 4070, and maybe Mega-Size GPU has his info wrong. I don't know, because I feel like it would feel weird to have this, unless this is like a TI version, and maybe, so again, he could have leaks about specs and, memory configurations, all of that, but not be sure, again, like maybe what Copite's saying here, about which of those specs will get which actual GPU label. Is it a 70? Is it an 80? Is it a TI? What is it? So maybe that could just be a problem with the leaked info. But again, leaked info, hopefully we'll get official info coming out soon. Now, I do want to report on, so AMD's Ryzen 7000 series of CPUs, unlike previous generations, they will all be coming with an integrated GPU. Now, we've been told not to expect much from it in terms of performance, but we are now seeing a benchmark leak out of the iGPU. However, as reported in this article, it looks like the system was using 64GB of GDDR5 memory, but it's running in a quad DIMM configuration, which what we've heard from AMD is that might struggle running at the maximum seeds in a quad DIMM configuration. So this might actually only be running at 3600. And I believe that your integrated GPU would be relying on fast, memory in the system, so that this could perhaps be hurting the performance a little bit. So it's worth bringing that up. And the WCCF Tech article I'm looking at here is showing that Ryzen 7000 iGPU, which has 2 compute units, is scoring fairly close to a Vega 8 iGPU with 8 compute units, and better than a Vega 6 iGPU with 6 compute units. but is actually scoring a little bit lower than even like an Alder Lake iGPU or a Raptor Lake iGPU. So, and you know, being significantly beat by like a Radeon 660M or 680M. So obviously this is just confirming that we shouldn't expect like massive gaming performance from the integrated stuff in there. But it is really nice to see that they'll all have graphics support. That's so useful when you need to like troubleshoot a bad graphics card, or if you're just building a, you know, a business PC that just needs to do word processing. Now you can actually buy a Ryzen without needing to specifically get one that has the graphics built in as a feature, that kind of a thing, since they'll all have that. Now, I was looking to see if I could find any new AMD RDNA3 information coming out here, because I feel like we've been getting way more leaks on the NVIDIA GPUs. And this isn't much, but it does look like there's double the cache per compute unit and shader array. When you dive into, I guess this is coming, was noticed by Coelacanth Dream and Kepler L2. And this is from the Free Desktop Linux repository. And I guess when you compare cache sizes, we can see that RDNA3 is getting a big bump to cache sizes, like the L0 vector data per CU looks like it's doubling. So, but now as far as what that actually does to performance or anything like that, which I wish I could tell you, I can't. So unfortunately, that's the best RDNA3 leak I found recently. Now, from Intel side of things, they are giving us some of, you know, their own, so this is not third-party testing, but from Intel themselves, talking about ray tracing performance, and they're showing the 1080p ray tracing of the Arc A770, which, as far as we know, will be their top-end GPU that they're launching soon, up against the RTX 3060. And they're showing, on average, about 14% better ray tracing performance than the RTX 3060. And I watched some interviews with them, and they are claiming that they feel like their ray tracing performance does kind of outperform against the competition, at least the competition that they'll be pricing against due to, you know, drivers and all of that. So that's interesting. They're also showing off some of their 1440p ray tracing performance using their XeSS upscaling technology. That's like their competitor to DLSS upscaling, that kind of a thing. And they're showing, you know, the baseline performance, and then with XeSS balanced and performance modes. And they're showing that they can, you know, get up to some good playable frame rates in a variety of titles by enabling that upscaling technology at 1440p. So interesting stuff. But again, I'm still personally a bit scared off by their, you know, driver situation. Now, that being said, they are issuing fixes rapidly. So Intel fixes multiple issues with their ARC control panel, which, you know, that software was one of the things that like Gamers Nexus especially had been complaining about. So we are seeing more updates with more fixes. So, you know, hopefully eventually we'll be in a good shape with all of that. Now, some exciting news on the upscaling front. Red Dead Redemption 2 is officially getting FSR 2.0 support, so you will not need to mod it in now if you want to use it. Now, I was going to test this out yesterday, but Steam was down, so I couldn't. Anyway, so maybe at some point I could do a side-by-side here if I have time, but I'm back to, you know, full-time teaching a new school year, so the big, in-depth, head-to-head side-by-sides take a huge amount of time to produce, so that might need to slow down. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, it's really nice to see FSR 2.0. But also, guys, in this same update, I don't know if this article mentions it, but yeah, it does. So a lot of people have hated the temporal anti-aliasing in Red Dead Redemption 2. They've made improvements to it. Now, again, I was wanting to test that out myself and haven't had the chance. But it looks like there is improved TAA, which would be great for the image quality of the game, because the TAA was honestly kind of bad. And they're also adding NVIDIA Reflex support, but only to reduce lag on gamepads rather than keyboard and mouse. So that's kind of interesting. Now, speaking of FSR 2.0 getting added to more games, we're seeing it added to Deep Rock Galactic and apparently coming soon to Saints Row. So that is, if we're looking at, you know, in this video cards article, getting our supported game list expanded here. Now the supported game list now also has Red Dead Redemption 2. That wasn't at the time of this particular article. And then we have a bunch of other games confirmed that they will be getting support. So it's really nice to see the fairly rapid expansion of FSR 2.0. And I have to get to work, so I hope all of you have an excellent day.